In this video, we're going to be looking at the final few matches that we played on our 5-win streak up to Master 3. So far the progression in Master Rank has been fairly straightforward. Hopefully that continues, we'll see. But we're going to look at this last match that we played with pure KASHTIRA, and then we're going to take a look at the 2 matches that we played with FLOOWANDEREEZE before hitting Master 3. So let's go ahead and get started. So this match was a little long, not because it was long in terms of turns and a grind game, but just a lot was happening during mainly my opponent's turn. So we are going second, and we only have 1 interruption in the Infinite Impermanence. The opponent special summons Fenrir, we let that go through with the search for Riseheart, and notice that the opponent normal summoned the Riseheart here. The only reason you would do this is if you did not want to special summon it to lock yourself into Xyz summons. So they end up banishing a Unicorn, but at this point I'm like, okay, I'm going to continue to save my Imperm because I want to see what they're going for. They go for Draco Sack, and they're going to go ahead and make the tokens. This might have been a good place to Imperm, but I didn't want to risk it just yet because I don't really know what they're on. I don't think they're on pure cash because you wouldn't go for this if you were. So now I'm like a little confused. They go into Cherubini, and again, I didn't know this line at all. So I'm just letting the opponent do stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's a problem because that's grabbing Rite of Erismir. However, they're not going to be able to activate this because this card states that you can only activate the effects of special summon monsters the turn that you activate this effect. So you've already activated the effect of Riseheart, which was normal summon, so the Rite isn't activatable, and that's good for me. Then I see them going to Sprint, and I'm like, are they on tier elements? That's really weird. So I'm like, okay, you've used your normal summon, you've got a Rite that's not usable in hand. I'm going to prevent you from even getting a tier game started and just, you know, cut you off with the Sprint. Now they could have Havness, or, well, not Havness wouldn't do anything. They could have the Sharon to pitch a card to special, and then maybe if they have traps, they could set it, but like, I'm putting them on, you know, you're not going to really have anything. Unfortunately, they do have the extender in Foolish Burial, and I'm like, okay, that's really bad because they're going to probably mill really good, and they do indeed mill Kelbeck, which is really unfortunate, as well as Crime, which doesn't do anything, and a Sulik, which they're going to be able to search with, and of course a fusion name in Sharon. So in hindsight, I probably should have saved the Impermanence for the eventual Kid Kalos if I knew that this was a Tearlaments-esque build, which, you know, now I know that this is one of the plays that they go for when they start Fenrir. They can do all of this combo into Sprint, dump, and get full Tearlaments combo off of that alone. So, yep, they're going to go ahead and get full extension here. I'm not going to go over all of this, but it's kind of unfortunate that they basically hit everything here. They're going to get actually all 3 fusion names. They're going to hit Mudora for Graveyard Interruption, and just get materials in Graveyard for searches and stuff. Thankfully, like I said, their traps are banished, or not banished, but in the Graveyard, so that means we don't have to really worry about them in the back row. So whatever we see on board is likely what we have to deal with. The opponent opts to go for Kit Kalos instead of a Kaleido, so they summon Kit Kalos twice during their turn, and a Ru Kalos. The saving grace about getting milled with KASHTIRA, I mean, obviously you don't want to get milled because you want your resources, but putting cards in the Graveyard for us makes our Birth live, so not only can we normal summon off Birth, but we can bring back from the Graveyard. This card doesn't target when it brings it back from the Graveyard, it just says like select a card and bring it back, so not target. But we only have 3 KASHTIRAs in the Graveyard, so if we activated Birth and attempted to bring back, the opponent chains Mudora, shuffles all 3 of our KASHTIRA names back in. And that's assuming the Birth would even resolve, which it wouldn't because of Ru Kalos to negate and destroy it. So we draw Birth for turn, which is unfortunate. I mean, I play 3 evenly, we didn't mill any, I was hoping to draw into that, but hey, it is what it is. We're going to go ahead and special summon Fenrir. The opponent immediately elves to bring back Merly, and we're going to, on the trigger of the monster effect, use Fenrir to banish the Ru Kalos. So this takes care of 1 interruption. We know one of the cards in hand is Rite of Erismir, so they might have a hand trap, but obviously no Maxi, otherwise they probably would have activated it already. But they're going to chain the Mudora here, which gets rid of another disruption that I would have to worry about. And just to put back their traps, and I guess like what would be considered a good mill in the Agido. And I'm just like, okay, as long as you don't mill another Shuffler, I'm happy. So they do end up milling the trap again, which is going to get them the Rhino Heart that was banished, a Merly, and another Rhino here. So they don't have another Tearlament card in hand, otherwise they would have brought back the Rhino that they milled, but they do go into Kaleido and shuffle back the Fenrir. And we know they have Rhino Heart and Right now in hand. They just reveal Ash Blossom to negate the Ogre, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, because we're now going to go ahead and look at the top 5 cards of their deck. My Birth is actually going to recur a Fenrir if possible, because they ended up milling one for me, so spinning back the Fenrir makes no difference. And what I'm thinking here on this reveal is I banish the Sulik face down, and I'm like, I'm also going to banish these top 3, because Birth, get back Fenrir, search Riseheart, banish Unicorn, banish the top 3, which now puts them on draw Havness for turn. So we know Havness is being drawn for turn, We know Right of Erismere is in hand, and they've already milled a lot of their relevant adventure cards here, so they're not going to really be able to set up much with the adventure package. And we know that they have another monster, I forget what it is now, Rhino Heart, that they brought off the Crime, that's right. So yeah, this is manageable. We go battle phase and we beat over everything that we can. So we don't have enough to beat over the Kaleido, unfortunately. I don't know why it has 3,000, but that's fine because we're going to go ahead and go into Big Eye and take the Kaleido. The opponent's seen enough and end up scooping, but we've banished the Rukalos face down. The Kit Kalos is in the graveyard. We've got Fenrir Interruption, Ogre Interruption still. We can probably even go into Diablosis and rip cards from their deck. And I don't even know if we could have banished the remaining cards face down from their deck, maybe. But yeah, we would have counted to see if that was possible. And the opponent was basically just on no playable resources. So they just end up scooping there. And that is a GG. So after that last match, the next day, I opted to switch back to FLOOWANDEREEZE and try my luck in Master Rank with this deck. To start off, we win the coin toss, which is good. Our opening hand is technically playable. The opponent chains a shifter to my duality, and I'm like, sure, that's totally fine. And I'm like, are they also on FLOOWANDEREEZE, or, you know, a stun deck or pure KASHTIRA maybe? So duality doesn't reveal anything that is super significant, but we do get the Dreaming Town. Unfortunately, I start off with Summon Eaglin, and I actually thought about this as soon as I said Summon. I was like, oh no, I hope he doesn't have like Imperm. And I'm like, I really should have started with the Stree to try to bait out the Imperm. That way, since I took the Dreaming Town off of duality, I could have used the Dreaming Town during my opponent's turn to summon the Eaglin. The opponent reveals Sword Soul, and I'm just like, this is insane. The shifter that normally Sword Soul would not like to play under, I mean, they can, but they would prefer not to, makes it so that Ecclesia gets banished, so I can't even negate it with Call by the Grave, which is, you know, really bad, because yeah, if I negate that with Call by the Grave, I bet you they have no other extension. So they do, okay, never mind. They reveal Emergence, and the Moye is going to bring a token, and they're going to go into Chisao, right? No, they go into Dragite, and I'm like, why would you do this? They know I have Trap Card, but their Moye is banished, so their water monster to negate that they need in the graveyard in order to negate with Dragite is not live, and I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. The problem is I need to get this Eaglin destroyed in order to summon a FLOOWANDEREEZE card and bring the Eaglin back. So the opponent is then going to go ahead and activate Emergence, grabbing Longyang, and then they go battle phase, and I'm like, holy crap, I just dodged a huge bullet there. So this is one of the gripes I have about FLOOWANDEREEZE, is like the deck is stopped so easily now, like it's not really worth playing. As you can see here, you essentially rely on your opponent misplaying in order to try to maybe come back in matches like this, just because going first is so underwhelming now. Again, going second can be better if you can draw your board breaks, but then it's a game of luck, right? Am I drawing my board breaks or am I not? In this matchup here, we had a decent hand to go first with, even though there was no Robina, but we got disrupted, and thankfully the opponent misplayed here, otherwise we would have been game over, right? Because if they go into Chisao, I guess Chisao wouldn't work either, right? Because you need, well, I guess you have to banish from hand with Chisao in order to negate. But they could at least negate that way. With this Dragite, it doesn't do anything, so obviously we ended up resolving map. They pass on nothing, so again, we know they have Longyang in hand, but nothing else. We're going to start with the Advent of Adventure that we searched off Empin so that we can activate map. Because we actually want Empin banished so that we can search for map, banish Robina, summon Toucan, bring back the Empin. Since Empin is at 1, you need to recycle your Empin with Advents. This is the awkward place that you have to go for, so I'll always say it every time I play FLOOWANDEREEZE, Konami, please unban or unlimit Empin. Alright, so we are on the rank up game here, and the anxiety starts. Going second, losing the coin flip, but our opening hand is actually pretty good. No way to dodge disruption, so no like Book of Moon or Advents, but the opponent here reveals For Hire Sprite, most likely the runic variant. And at this point I'm like, okay, I have it evenly matched. They're gonna probably put up Carrot because this end board normally ends with the Carrot on board. But I'm thinking, like, if I can draw into a spell or something to bait the Carrot, the Book of Moon, etc., we might actually have a chance to break this board. The Runic For Hire Sprite deck is one of the strongest decks in the game for sure. It is very, very powerful because obviously the Runic engine is in and of itself very strong. Combined with the small For Hire and Sprite packages that it supplements it with, it has a ton of draw power, and it's very hard to disrupt because it can play through a lot of disruptions, as Sprite usually can. So the opponent is going for standard extensions here. I would do this differently if I was the opponent. I would opt to put the Elf in the extra monster zone and put Fulgo underneath it, just because I'd want the untargetability of Elf. So this is a bit of a misplacement in my opinion. But yeah, the opponent is able to extend fully here, go into Gigantic, which undoubtedly is going to grab Carrot because, hey, they don't really play any other level 2s to extend into. So as expected, they are setting up their end board now. Funny enough, they don't have any Runic cards, so that is interesting. But I believe they did a Rafale reveal and revealed the Fountain, yeah, so no actual like quick play Runics. And they took this over Ash, which was very interesting, right? So they're definitely planning to draw 3 with Folgo, and how they would do that is they need another Monster Zone open, obviously, but the Donpa, when a For Hire monster is special summoned, can pop a face-up card on the field. So as soon as I put anything face-up on the field, they can bring back a For Hire monster and pop a card. So normally they would get the Rookie or Mayhem For Hire in order to do that, but they can do Rex Banish special summon a For Hire, I believe. And Elf can also bring back the Donner, which is a link 2 if I have a monster, right? So they'd get Donner, they'd get the Rex special summon, and then they could Donpa pop a card, Folgo draw 3, draw into Runic cards, Fountain is online, then they just have more disruption. So that's what I'm playing up against. Let's see what we draw for turn. And we draw Pot of Extravagance. This is probably the best card I could draw, hoping that the opponent isn't on Ash, and the fact that they revealed Ash from Rafale and didn't take it, I'm like, okay, let's hope that they're not on Ash. This card still has to dig us into a Book of Moon, which again is a long shot, but that's what this deck is now, right? The Carrot, if it negates this, is technically the better thing for me because then I'm not gambling to draw into a Book of Moon. Sure enough, the Carrot does negate, and I'm like, that is amazing. Then they're going to trigger Elf right away in order to bring back that red, and I'm like, okay, you're locking yourself out of your Folgo draw 3 still here, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong if you guys know this deck better than me, because I don't play it, so I don't know. But this opens up evenly matched, and funny enough, the opponent keeps Fountain, and I'm like, okay. I'm like paranoid because their screen was still lighting up. I'm like, is this... Oh, sorry, not lighting up at this point, but it did light up when I summoned the Patchy here, and I'm like, this is why I did this, because I'm like, knowing my luck, they have a Freezing Curses in hand, and if I summon Robina and they Freezing Curses, you know, they put back, they draw, and then they're, you know, draw into something good and just extend again and play. But we banished most of their resources now, right? And what's funny is, with Patchy, 1200 attack, the cards that you're able to normal summon in Sprite that would actually be able to take this out, I think are only like 3. So they can't bring out their big monsters, obviously, because they can't tribute. They have nothing to tribute. The Beat can crash with it, and so can the red, I believe, which is banished face down now. And they likely only play 1 red and 1 carrot, so those are gone for good. They can't obviously extend into any link plays. And then the Jet, which usually they only play 1 Jet, and it's already been used. So there's literally no monsters that they can draw into. They have to draw into something to negate or destroy the Patchy. And the Runic spells, the only destruction for monsters is the destruction of special summon monsters with Runic Flashing Fire. So they have to have Freezing Curses or an Imperm, and they likely don't play Imperm. So they have to have 1 of 2 Freezing Curses in the deck in order to negate the Patchy, and then have some other way to extend and play the game. With only 2 cards, that's likely or not very likely. So the Freezing Curses, put back with the Runic Fountain, draw 1, and then hope that, you know, whatever 2 cards they have are enabling them to play through the Patchy that's negated. That was their only win condition. So that's why I end up summoning Patchy in main phase 2 and not going for Robina, where I could potentially open myself up to getting Freezing Curses, and then I just end on Robina, and, you know, they put back, they draw for turn. If they have any kind of engine, they start playing again, and I could potentially lose. So, you know, we draw Book of Moon for turn, so if the Extravagance resolved, we would have drawn Book. But hopefully you guys understood my logic there. Let me know if you disagree. In hindsight, you know, obviously it's low odds, so I could have gone for Robina and probably been fine, and obviously I was, because here I am comboing off in the next turn. But I opted to play it 100% safe just because I know the deck is probably out of gas, and they need to basically use their Runic engine now as their win condition, which is a lot harder to do, especially against FLOOWANDEREEZE, because I like it when you banish my cards, and I can recur them assuming that I don't just like have nothing to start my engine with. So at this point, I'm in full control, and the opponent ends up scooping. Funny again here, I have to go for Advent of Adventure because again I want to recycle my Empin because Empin is at 1, so Konami, please bring Empin back to 3. But these are the awkward plays we go for, but again, we had control of the match, winning that game because of an evenly matched. And, you know, you can argue if the opponent misplayed or not on that negate of the Pot of Extravagance. I would say it's a misplay, but I understand, you know, not wanting to give your opponent more resources, so that's what you have to do with FLOOWANDEREEZE when you play it. So I don't really know if I want to stick it out with this deck because it does seem very fragile as well.